on immigration, and then we'll flip over to international later on.
Okay, well, this is a big day because the U.S. Supreme Court has opened the door for Trump related to the humanitarian parole program that has been in effect. And there's about over 500,000 immigrants in the U.S. that are going to be impacted by the cancellation of the humanitarian programs that have allowed them to come to the U.S. because of troubles back home. These are the migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Over 500,000. Like, it's unbelievable. And this is added to previous cancellations. In May, some 350,000 Venezuelans had their TPS, temporary protected status, canceled, leaving them in limbo, as these new people will be in limbo because they won't know, like they won't have work permits, they won't be legally in the United States, so they're going to have to scramble around. Possibly some will claim asylum or whatever other programs there are available to help them get reinstated. And also the U4U program for Ukrainians was canceled, involving some 240,000 Ukrainians that are in the United States. And in an article that was published just recently from Politico, there's a little paragraph that's worth citing. It says, while about 500,000 Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, and Venezuelan immigrants are directly affected by the ruling, the one I just mentioned,
Yep.
it may have consequences for about 500,000 others allowed into the U.S. under the same parole provision, including Ukrainians, Afghans, and children from Central America. The 500,000 could also involve cancellations of temporary protected status for some of these other people. So initially, right now, today, 500,000 people have been uprooted and no longer have status. But the projection is, at least according to that one report, a further 500,000 in the days ahead could be impacted by what's happening here today. So that's an update here on the local front.
Thank you. And thanks for referring to the 500,000 number that just got impacted today. This just literally dropped, right? The article that I'm pointing at on AP News was just updated literally, less than an hour ago.
Right.
And the Supreme Court on Friday again cleared the way for the Trump administration to strip temporary legal protections from hundreds of thousands. And that could then expose nearly 1 million people to potential deportation. And so why, as people might know, I'm Haitian American. I was born in Haiti, and I'm thankful to this country because it basically took me in along with my family. And so, there are so many positives I could, speak to about that. And so anytime you see, folks being potentially removed from the country, especially when it doesn't relate to any, criminal acts that they've done, then it's always a concern. But the question for you is why, or what other means could there be to address this other than doing it this way? And then are you shocked by the Supreme Court's decision?
Okay, I'm shocked. And the reason is because these people are all legally in the country. We're not talking about illegals or criminals. And I think the reason this is happening is Trump, when he was campaigning, said he's going to get rid of 11 million illegal immigrants. And he's racking up the numbers. It's going slowly. It's not going as quickly as he had projected. And he's looking for numbers. And this is a very quick way to get rid of 1 million people. So it's the largest ever cancellation of legal status in the United States, largest by number of people. being
And can you go
impacted.
into that when you say legal status? They were paroled here
Yes,
legally,
meaning
correct?
someone
But
had to say, okay, who are you? Where did you
yeah,
come from? What is your status? Are you a criminal? Do you have
correct.
some kind of medical contagious disease? Who do you have here? Why are you coming here? And it's because back home, things are terrible, either a war or famine or
Or gang
gangsters
violence in Haiti.
or,
Yeah.
like it's impossible to live back home.
Mhm.
So they escaped home to come here, but they didn't crawl across the border. They didn't go underground or over a fence or on some boat secretly. They legally entered and were granted legal status to be here. So
So
what's the problem? Like, what's the you know the circumstances back home have not changed for
yeah.
most of these. Like, there's no debate about does America have the right to cancel the program? Yes, they have the right. There's nobody's going to say, "Oh no, you don't have the right." But the question is, well, why would you be doing this when there's no change in circumstances for these people, and you're
Yeah.
just making them that much more vulnerable because now before they left home, so they survived and they're here and they're productive and they're working. But now they're saying, okay, that's it, you're finished, meaning no status here, no work, no support, no welfare, whatever support, and sort of I'm in no man's land, so to speak,
Correct.
as a person from one of these categories.
Yeah.
So,
So when we talked about deportations before, we've always said that most people agree that if you are like a violent criminal and
oh,
you're
out.
going to be deported, no one's going to shed a tear. However, I would imagine that a million people being impacted by this is probably going to then impact their friends, families, and neighbors who are in the US. And so it seems to me that there's going to be a political blowback from this, I would imagine. And so
This
therefore, what other solutions are there? Like Congress, they're the ones who are supposed to be resolving this problem,
right.
right?
There's
And by the
there's
way, go ahead.
let's just say that there's litigation going on at the lower levels about this stuff, whether it's legal, not legal, and etc. But at the time, for the time being, the Supreme Court has not intervened, saying, "Hold your horses." On the contrary, it said, "Well, we're not going to intervene at this moment on this matter." So the lower court still has to rule about the legality and so on, and it could come up to the Supreme Court again, which could
Yeah,
be a fix.
yeah,
But you're quite right. I mean, there's a lot of people that are being affected. So there are, Congress has to step in for one. Congress can cancel all this. Congress can say, hold it. We affirm these people can stay. And that's it,
yeah,
because they have the ultimate say in this. There's not a emergency power. One of the issues that's going on right now is these even in the case of tariffs, never mind deportations, the question is, does the president have the power to deport people? And the argument is, well, because there's emergency power, he has the power. But then you have to look at each emergency. Is there an emergency or not? And in this case, I can't say that there's some emergency that would merit, uh, you know, cutting off 1 million people, let's say. So it's let's put it this way: it's disturbing, but it's not settled yet. There's the
yeah.
courts, there's the Congress, there's the people. There are a few steps yet that can be taken to kind of put a lid on the fire and sort out who's who should be out and who should not be out. So stay tuned, so to speak. But
Yeah.
it's very spicy, very spicy.
No, definitely. Let me read this part. The justices lifted a lower court order that kept humanitarian parole protections in place. And the court did not explain its reasoning in the brief order, as is typically on its emergency docket. Two justices publicly dissented. So it seems to me that the Supreme Court is not necessarily saying, look, we agree with this. It's just that they allowed lower court well, they lifted a lower court order that kept things in place.
That's right.
So there's still big possibility that
It's still
again,
going to go down. They'll still have
yeah,
litigation going on down below, and it could still come up to the Supreme Court.
yeah. Okay, so news on that front, and you mentioned also recently there was a TPS stripping on Venezuelans. So how many people did that impact?
I think it was 350,000. Yeah, that
And
was in
do you
early May.
correct? And do you know the status of that, or is the
Well, that's a little
administration
different because that's a temporary protective status. So that's for people who were in the United States when things went wrong, and the government said, "Okay,
okay, you
well,
didn't
you
leave?
can stay and you're protected." So it's similar but a little different.
Yeah,
Uh, and these people are also in the same boat. They're sort of what's the word? Uh, Cowboys without a cause, so to speak. Like what can you do? No work permit, no right to be here. You're not being quite deported just yet,
yeah,
but you're vulnerable. I mean, they could, and the problem is these people are all registered, all of them, because they had to give their name and where they are,
correct.
etc., as part of coming
Biometrics.
into
Yeah,
or
yeah,
getting the status. So it's a matter for the people who are deporting things to go down the list. Oh, here's this guy. Here's his address.
yeah.
Let's get this guy next. A
Well,
van in
I'm
front of the house, and into the van
yeah.
out to the airport.
Although I was a believer in the pendulum, and I think if there's going to be blowback inevitably, and I think the focus will still probably be on violent criminals,
Yeah,
even those who might fall into these two camps,
yeah,
because I just don't see the benefit in just moving people for the sake of moving them
no,
just because you can. I think it's going to end up impacting the polls, and it's going to become another election issue in a couple years.
yeah.
So
I'm sure you have to. With such a large number of people, there got to be some criminals in there. It's not like
yeah,
everybody's a saint in there. So
correct.
those people have to get deported. But this is a sledgehammer hitting
Yeah.
a nail, sort of.
Well, this whole topic's moving so fast. We'll have you back on, in some time to
Sure.
see what results. Okay,